Three people stared at the blank sketch paper. Only one of them was calm. Detective Rafael Ontiveros leaned forward, thick fingers linked, his eyes red from too many overnights in a single week. Beside him sat Melody Price, the only surviving witness of the Fairfield abductions, her bitten raw nails drumming the edge of the table. At the end, under the recessed lamp, sat Irene Kessler, Chicago PD's senior forensic artist. 46 years old, auburn hair streaked prematurely silver, posture perfect from ballet lessons abandoned decades earlier. "Whenever you're ready," Irene said, pencil already balanced. She always used a broad 4B first, letting smudges find the face before she shaped them. "Take a breath. Describe what you remember." Melody exhaled shakily. "He wore a cap, black, no logo. The brim was low, but I could still see heavy brows, straight, maybe a scar on the left side. His eyes were wrong, like someone switched the lights off inside." Irene nodded, shading broad strokes where a hat rim would cast darkness. "Tell me about the brows." "Thick, like caterpillars, and his nose was long, sort of hawkish, crooked near the bridge." Standard procedure. Sketch, pause, refine. She entered that flow where her own breathing disappeared into the graphite. Cheekbones, lips, chin with a cleft. Melody spoke in staccato bursts. Irene translated each into angle and plane, subtraction and curve. After 40 minutes, the initial likeness emerged. Ontiveros said, "Looks like a real bastard," which was his typical gallows compliment. Melody gave a tiny nod. Irene reached for her kneaded eraser to clarify the jawline, and froze. The jaw beneath her 4B looked wrong. Too narrow, too delicate. That was her jaw. She had spent years studying her own bone structure in mirrors, teaching students how to internalize anatomy. She would recognize it blindfolded. She blinked, heart ticking faster. She pressed eraser to paper, widened the jaw, squared it firmly. Fine. A minute later, she attended to the eyes. The witness had said they were dark, maybe brown. Irene deepened the irises, but the shapes that appeared were unmistakably hers. Almond with a downward tilt at the outer edge, her father's Filipino heritage echoing in the fold. She inhaled sharply. "Stop getting sentimental. Get it done." She adjusted the lids, giving them a heavier brow ridge, thickened lashes to neutralize the similarity. "Everything okay?" the detective asked. "Fine," she said, "just refining." But her pulse hammered. Eventually the session ended. Melody signed off on the composite. Ontiveros left with it to scan and circulate. Irene slid her drawing pad into her bag, telling herself she'd quarantine the page, start fresh in the morning. That night she climbed the stairs of her Edgewater condo, kicked off shoes, poured a glass of red. She spread the pad on her drafting table, turned on the gooseneck lamp, and felt the blood drain from her face. The sketch looked nothing like the criminal she had tried to capture. The man's cap remained, the crooked nose and scar. But beneath the brim was a woman's face. Fine pores, faint crow's feet, strands of hair slipping forward. Her own. Not as she looked that moment, but older. Late 50s, maybe. Wrinkles nested between the brows like wings, the jaw softer, throat looser under gravity. Her hand tingled as if still holding the pencil. She flipped back pages of her book. Every previous case lay in orderly sequence. A robber, a carjacker, the runaway teen she'd helped find. Her graphite style crisp and clinical. No bleed-through. No narcissistic substitution. Hers was a logical brain. There had to be a neurological explanation. Mirror neurons hijacked by fatigue, witness descriptions conveniently matching some of her features, self-referencing bias. That, plus the glass of wine. She shut the cover and went to bed. The next morning, Ontiveros called. "That composite, we got 3 hits from tip lines already. People swear they saw him near the Lakeshore Carnival 2 nights ago. We'll canvass again tonight." A pang of relief. Maybe her mind had embellished, but the drawings still functioned. She didn't mention the self-portrait twist. She chalked it to night brain theatrics. The relief lasted until the second interview. Victim family number 2, the mother of a missing college student. Same conference room, identical fluorescent hum. Irene turned the pad to a fresh leaf. Start with the chin, she instructed. Some people find it easier to build up from the bottom. The mother closed her eyes. Square, tensed, like he was angry even at rest. 30 minutes in, Irene experienced the same dislocation. The eyes she'd shaded? They stared back with the same asymmetry she'd always hated in photos, one lower than the other. A tiny mole by the corner of the mouth appeared unbidden, a mark she covered with concealer every morning. But this time the features weren't just hers. They were older still. A 65-year-old version. Cheeks fallen, lips thinned, hair completely silver. The witness described a man in his 30s. The drawing insisted on becoming Irene in her senior years. She excused herself to the restroom, cold water on her wrists, breathing exercises. Returning, she forced corrections, measuring proportions with her pencil's ferrule, double-checking distances. Yet each pass with the eraser merely exposed fresher strata of her aging face. Like the charcoal knew a truth she didn't. She delivered a compromised composite, apologized for any fuzziness. Detective Ontiveros didn't seem to notice, but Irene left headquarters shaky, near nausea nibbling her gut. On the EL home, she could not stop staring at other commuters' reflections in the window overlays. People flickered alongside her mirrored self. She kept seeing that older woman layered upon her living expression, as though graphite ghosts now inhabited glass. At home, she reviewed both anomalous sketches and noted something else. The first showed Irene perhaps 57, the second nearer 65. 8-year interval. She pulled a spare sheet, set a timer for 5 minutes, and without prompting, let her pencil wander. Lines flowed of their own volition. Forehead furrowed deeper, eyes clouded, skin papery, maybe 73. She snapped the book shut. She phoned her sister Anna, a neurologist in Denver. Hypothetically, she began, if someone started inserting their own face into unrelated drawings, what could cause it? Tumor? Early dementia? Anna laughed softly. You're too self-aware for that. Probably stress projection. Your brain's autopilot using familiar templates. But what if the face keeps aging each attempt, like a flip book of years ahead? A pause. Then I'd say your unconscious is begging you to pay attention. Memory of mortality, maybe? Irene thanked her, hung up, poured another glass, and slept poorly. 3 nights later, a 4th abduction shook the city. The Fairfield Taker, as media dubbed him, had snatched a 17-year-old outside swim practice. No witnesses this time. Ontiveros called Irene at dawn. I need you at the scene. Doesn't make sense, but the captain wants every angle. Crime scene perimeter. Chain link fence. Gym bag on concrete. 1 sneaker left behind. Irene had assisted at scenes before, but rarely before sunrise. She studied the broken shoelaces fibers, the scuff on asphalt. Tried to memorize everything, though it wasn't her job. Back in the cruiser, Ontiveros rubbed his temples. None of the cameras got his face. Doc says we're looking at a spree cycle accelerating. We need that composite to be perfect. Irene swallowed. I might need help. Help? You're the best. She decided to confide, at least partially. Something odd has been happening to my sketches. His radio crackled. The sergeant barked updates. Haunted eyes met Irene's. Hold the thought, Kessler. Got to roll. He deposited her at the station. She sat alone in the art room, a quiet oasis of drafting tables and pastel smell. She prepped for a hypothetical witness, but none arrived. Still, she felt compelled to draw. Fresh sheet. She rested the pencil. Her hand moved. Lines emerged. Gaunt cheeks, sagging jowls, cataract haze, sunspots. 79. Next sheet. 91. Skin translucent. Hair a white wisp, lips collapsed. With each portrait came a sensation like tinnitus, a high internal keening. She pressed fingertips to ears, but the noise originated lower, in the chambers of her chest. On the fifth sheet, the face no longer aged. It looked deathly smooth, features flattened, undefined, almost a corpse mask. She stopped there, breathing fast. She shuffled the pages like tarot cards. 5 stages, 57, 65, 73, 79, 91, then the blank funeral visage. Time unfolding through graphite. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ontiveros. Had to fly to Indio Park. Possible dump site. Call you ASAP. Dump site. Irene's gut twisted. She stuffed the aging sequence into a manila envelope, locked her cubicle, and headed downstairs to evidence, where original composites were scanned. She compared the first drawing, supposedly of the perp, to the scan on screen. Hairs on her arms lifted. The digital copy matched the perp composite the public saw, but the paper original in her envelope showed her face. It had changed after the copy made, meaning others saw the criminal, she saw herself. She whispered, "Why?" Her artist's mind searched for metaphors. Maybe she was the repository, time-traveling through art as witness to something unseen. Or maybe each victim's future was bending through her hand on its way to be captured. Victims. How many had been taken? 4 confirmed. 1 returned. And in the first sketch, she saw herself at 57. That was 9 years distant. If each face represented a future victim, could the ages correspond to dates? Or number of victims ahead? Nonsense. She needed context. She logged into the case file database. Fairfield incidents traced back 6 months. Abductor average interval tightened. 38 days, 27, 19, now 12. At that rate, the next might be in 5 or 6. Scrolling through witness statements, she noticed an odd constant. Each abduction occurred along the 147 bus line, roughly equidistant. When plotted, the 5 sites created a slightly curved path north to south, like contour lines of a river. She overlaid the bus route on Google Earth, then added a transparent layer with her 6 self-portraits aligned chronologically, scaling distance as time. The face's eye lines seemed to point to nodes on the map. She repositioned, rotated, until the geometry clicked. If she placed the oldest portrait at the southernmost site and the youngest at the northernmost, the pupils connected a diagonal that intersected an old railway spur, the defunct Milwaukee North Freight Tunnel. Her stomach fluttered. Symbol or coincidence? She grabbed her envelope, left the precinct, caught a cab to Milwaukee Avenue. Afternoon smog hung low. She paid the driver, stepped onto cracked pavement behind an abandoned textile mill. Decades of graffiti armored the loading bay. The freight tunnel mouth yawned like dry throat. Chain fence had been cut recently. Irene pulled her flashlight and phone, dialed 911 but didn't press send yet. She stepped inside. The air was cold, metallic. Rats scurried. She advanced, sweeping light across walls. Paint chips fluttered across her shoes like gray snowflakes. 50 feet in, she heard faint humming. A generator. She followed. A side room opened, lantern glow flickering. Photos lined corkboards. Newspaper clips, bus schedules, headshots of young women, the abductors' trophies. In the center, an easel. On it, a charcoal drawing, unfinished. Her, but not any of the ages she'd drawn. This was Irene around 46, present day. Same silver streaks, same tilt of chin. The shoulders, though, were bound by duct tape. Graphite bruises mottled the cheeks, footsteps behind. She spun. A man stood silhouetted, knit cap low, crooked nose, sweatshirt spattered with paint or something darker. "You found my studio," he said, voice calm, almost pleased. He held up a digital recorder. "Your interviews helped me correct the jawline." Her heart slammed. She raised the flashlight like a baton. "You're sick," she said. He shrugged. "Everyone's a curator of moments. I curate fear." She backed toward the exit while fingering her phone, thumb ready to hit send. "Why me?" "I needed an anchor," His eyes glittered. A face worth aging. Every version of you I draw tells me how long I have until the next harvest. The art decides. The floor dropped beneath her stomach. Her sketches hadn't conjured time, they'd mirrored his. He had been drawing her long before she borrowed his obsession. Somehow, wrongly, their visions had entangled. "How did you even see my face?" she whispered. He tapped his temple. "I see a line of light in everyone, but yours burned brightest. First time I rode the 147, I looked out the window, and there you were sketching some kid at the station. I couldn't shake it. The line led me here." He advanced. Irene retreated until her back met a pillar. She pressed send on the silent 911 call, praying for cell reception underground. He noticed the motion, lunged. The flashlight clattered away. Cool metal pressed her throat. A box cutter. "My next piece," he breathed. Her training drilled home. Conversation buys time. "You drew me wrong," she rasped. "Show me your latest attempt. Let me critique." He hesitated. Artists crave validation. He lowered the blade slightly, turned the easel so she could see. She steadied her breath. The drawing was indeed her present face, but faint guidelines suggested an overlay, as if he planned to superimpose another countenance. One of the abducted girls, maybe. "I can fix your proportions," she said. "Your midtones are muddy. I have better pencils." She slid her bag off her shoulder, unzipped slowly, retrieving her own 4B. He watched, mesmerized. She set paper on a crate, started to draw. Her hand no longer shook. Graphite fluttered across the tooth of the page, releasing an odd calm in her chest. She began with her eyes. No, not hers. She drew his, heavy, unlit. She mapped the scar, the crooked ridge, the snarled lips. Each stroke felt like cutting chords. As she worked, the high keening inside her resurfaced, then resolved into words. "You draw what must be seen." She darkened the neck shadow, thick and tight, like a noose. The man's breathing deepened, transfixed. She said softly, "Tilt your head a little." He obeyed. She smudged cheekbones, caught the anxious twitch by his mouth. "Closer," she murmured. A distant siren wailed through the tunnel mouth, echoing. The man frowned, turning. Irene seized the moment. She slammed the graphite point into his eye. He screamed, slashing blindly. She ducked, sprinted toward the tunnel entrance. Behind, flailing, he knocked over the easel. Charcoal powder exploded like dark fireworks. Blue strobe lights mushroomed ahead. Officers flooded in, Ontiveros at the front. They tackled the abductor, cuffed him, dragged him past Irene. Blood seeped from his ruined eye. Ontiveros held her shoulders. "Kessler, Jesus, you okay?" She nodded, trembling. Later, ambulance lights painting the night. Ontiveros said, "We traced your call. You saved those girls. We found 4 alive in a chamber beyond that studio." She gripped a thermal blanket. "They'll need real artists to draw their futures." He gave her a puzzled smile, but she was already watching paramedics load the man into the van. For a second, his remaining eye met hers. In it, she saw not rage but relief, as if his compulsion had been stolen. 2 weeks passed. She visited each rescued girl in the hospital, bringing sketch pads so they could draw whatever comforted them. Flowers, pets, cartoon heroes. None showed prophetic aging. Their lines were simply lines. Irene returned to her condo, destroyed the haunting series, burned them in a metal basin on the balcony. Flakes of charcoal snowing toward the alley. The next morning she sat at her drafting table. Supplies arrayed. A blank sheet waited. She lifted a fresh pencil and paused. She began to draw herself, eyes open and unafraid, exactly as she was in that moment. 46, alive. No attempt to predict tomorrow. When she finished, she dated the corner with today's date only. Then she slid the pad shut. Some lines record crimes, others release them. She decided she'd let time sketch its own face and spend the years ahead teaching survivors how to hold a pencil so it told only the truths they chose.